Let's see if this works. It says it's recording. I'm going to go with that and see where we get to. Okay. So just check what we had. So there's a couple of things that I just wanted us to discuss and kind of firm up today before we kind of go off for Christmas, and so that we can get information over to all and try and get some of that information about the webinar and the blog and everything out before the Christmas holidays if we can. So the first thing I've got is just to do a quick run through of the blurb. Now, did everybody manage to access the blurb with the link that I sent over?
Do you mean the spreadsheet, Gemma?
Not the blurb, sorry, not the blurb. Sorry, I'm one ahead of myself. Sorry, the blog, not the blurb.
Blog.
I can just share that again if anyone needs it. The link. Yeah, and I'll just make sure everybody's actually on it as well.
Yeah.
Might need to add.
Anonymous hamster, badger, tiger.
Yeah.
There we go. Excellent. So if everyone would like to just kind of do a quick scan read through and just make sure that they're happy with everything in there. If anyone's got any suggestions for things that might have been missed or that we might need to add or to take out, please do go ahead. So if I give you like 5-10 minutes to just have a read through of it first. Just give me a heads up when you're done so I'm not interrupting anybody.
This is where I'm like, is there a thumbs up feature on this?
There's a wave feature next to it.
Oh no, it's a raise hand.
I think that's the only thing that they've got on this. There isn't like an extra emoji kind of thing like you can in Teams.
There is a thumbs up feature in the emojis in the chat.
Oh yeah, we could do it there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
January 25th is a Saturday.
Yeah, it should be 21st, shouldn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's there we go.
Oh, we both edited at the same time.
Oh, there we go.
Just wondering if there is any overlap between digital exams versus paper screening and then proctoring versus exam redesign. I wonder if there is an opportunity to merge those two.
Yeah, I'm willing to open it out to discussion. Yeah.
I feel like for us, those are really linked and we sort of see them together. But I think what I'm discovering is that for a lot of people, that really basic issue of digital versus paper is still such a big thing. It almost is like a separate challenge. But I see what you mean. To be honest, I thought the same thing when I was reading it through. I was like, oh, some of these seem similar.
They are similar, but for many people now it has become a thing to proctor because of AI, and they want to make sure it's like invigilated. So to actually see it as a separate thing and not not everyone will read. I mean, our students definitely won't read, but I'm not sure if like people who would read our blog will see it. It's good, I thought, to see it separately, although it can be part of the other one. So.
Yeah. One thing that's I thought in student engagement, I think we should make it really clear that we're thinking of inviting students.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really good and interesting thing, and I think people will go ooh because they just love hearing the student perspective.
Would it be a student-led event, then a student-led webinar, or are we thinking to bring in a student as well as a member of staff to these webinars?
I don't know if we got as far as planning that. I think we just kind of discussed this idea that it would be nice to. I mean, perhaps we could not be that specific and say that it's about promoting student voice and listening to student voice, and we haven't quite decided the best format for that yet. But so like including student voice in our webinars, maybe.
Sorry, I'm also monitoring that there's a conversation on the chat going on as well. So if we do we want to narrow down that digital exam question first, and then I can come to the question that's in the chat. So how are we feeling? Do we feel that it makes sense to separate it at the moment for sort of clarity? Or do we feel it makes more sense to join them together again for clarity? What do we feel that it is more representative of the sector really at the moment?
Sorry, for some reason I'm not being able to share my video. Not share it. Yeah. As in switch on my video.
Give you permission to do that because it's put me on as a moderator, which allows me to share content. I'm not entirely sure that it allows you guys to share content, which I don't think it does. And I'm trying to figure out how to let that happen. So give me a moment.
When I was logging on, I had problems with my video because it was like the browser, it hadn't shared permission for the browser to use the video, and I kind of had to come on and off again. It's a bit.
I wonder if that's the case.
Nurun, I remember seeing you a moment ago.
Sorry?
I saw you a moment ago.
Yes, I thought my camera was on, then suddenly it just it's showing me that I cannot switch, put it back on again.
It's very odd. I've got share
coming up as disabled. I don't know what happened there.
Maybe leave the room and come back. Try.
Yeah.
I'll try that. Yeah, I'll try that.
Because everything's set to share on the settings end. So sorry, as we were saying, which way around do we want it? Do we want to merge those topics into one, or do we feel that they should still be separate?
I think they work okay separate.
Yeah, me too.
So 2 separate. Anyone else have a strong preference either way?
I feel like it might be useful to start with it separate, and then, because this is something that's being sent out, isn't it? So it's useful from that point of view to have it separate, and then it's something maybe we can ask for some feedback on. Maybe in the first webinar, get some opinions from people at other institutions.
What we were suggesting was merged. Sorry, I sort of missed that detail. What was the suggestion to merge which two?
So it's the digital exams and the paper exams and the proctoring, and put them all under one heading.
Digital exams versus paper scanning, and under and proctoring versus exam redesign.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, they are different. They're different, really, aren't they? In my mind.
Yeah. Okay, so I think then there's a general consensus to keep those as they are then, so that's fine. The other one that you popped into the chat, Sally, is had we decided to restrict the AI conversation to generative AI only? Noting that if we did so, it would mean that tools that use AI to support marking, like grade, for example, would then not be included in the conversation if we did. The other option is to have it as 2 sections, something that's very specific for generative AI, something wider around AI in general, because then I suppose we can start talking about the accessibility tools that are used in assessment as well.
We've also said making the most of as kind of subtext rather than any kind of challenges around it. So I don't know if that's something we want. We're basically being very specific here. It's only generative AI, and it's only about making the most of generative AI in assessment, rather than any challenges associated with students perhaps using generative AI in assessment. So I don't know whether we want to kind of make it literally just that. So that kind of narrows it in my mind to how staff are using AI to help to author unique and assessment types. Or maybe I'm misreading it, but that's kind of what that means to me.
No, I think if you're reading it that way, then you're probably not going to be the only person who reads it that way as well.
But that's not really the intention.
Yes, exactly. So if that's not the intention, then we need to make sure that we explain our intention fully, don't we? Yeah.
I think I'll agree with Sally on that. Could we perhaps add a hyphen and put, well, opportunities and challenges kind of overused now. We see it quite often associated with generative AI, or something like application and challenges.
Or challenges and opportunities.
Challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
Both of those included then. But only generative, I think. I actually think there's so much under generative. If we tried to include using AI as a tool in other contexts, could make it could result in a less focused conversation.
Yeah. It then does make me wonder whether we need an additional strand for those other tools that are starting to kind of gain traction in the sector that are using a form of machine learning or AI that's not generative.
I feel like this is something that we can, of course, invite discussions on. I think a lot of people have already signed up for this special interest group, so perhaps we might want to pose this question to the community, what they might want to explore, which generative AI, because as Sally mentioned, there are so many aspects to explore within this topic.
Yeah, maybe we need something at the end of the blog that kind of opens the question out to the community and kind of encourages them to email the inbox with their ideas or something like that.
I mean, we could say that the program for the first webinar isn't, I think we talked about this actually, isn't like restricted that much, that we are open to some suggestions of how to steer it more from the community. Then we don't have to take suggestions, but we can if we like them.
Yeah.
If we're careful how we word that.
Yeah.
Maybe a call to action in the blog then?
Yes, I think that would be good. And I think in the first webinar there, I think we've discussed having some mini presentations, but I think at the same time it's also important to just have an open discussion with the digital assessments or community who are colleagues from within the community who are interested in digital assessments or all things related to digital assessments, whether this is whether the topics that we have outlined here is what they expect us to explore within this SIG, or whether there is something more that we need to add to this.
Yeah. So some kind of workshop alongside those, or some kind, maybe a lean coffee format discussion that allows us to move through quite quickly. So, with those changes added, would we be happy for the blog to go to Alt by the end of the week? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So the next thing I've got on my list is so the January webinar. There's a couple of kind of admin details we need to firm up so that when I go out and fill out the form to Alt, they know how we want the webinar to run. So we need to decide. We need to provide them with a blurb with a little bit of an order of delivery. So it would be helpful if you said that they're going to be on the webinar here. Was Lisa going to be on it as well?
Sorry, I don't. It's a bit hard to hear you, Gemma.
Sorry.
No, I'm wondering, Mickey, if you'd mind just muting. I think we're getting some background noise from you. Lovely. Yes.
So,
sorry, what was it?
So we need to provide Alt with a blurb for the January webinar. I do have a bit of a draft one, but given what we've just spoken about, I think we do need, it will need bits added to it. So if I just share the draft one in the chat thread as well. And this is kind of based on the format that others on the Alt website have gone with. But I think if we're going to have that discussion section, I'm going to need to add in something there.
I think we might have talked about it being just a 1 hour webinar. We had 2 hours in the diary kind of to give us time to on either side, and to maybe have a chance for people to hang around afterwards if they want to keep going with the discussion, rather than it being a full 2 hours. Am I remembering that right? Does anyone else remember?
Yeah, I think we talked about having brief presentations, 10 minutes-ish, from 3 speakers, and then we open up the forum for discussions. That's the kind of, I think that's what I recall from, I think there was a document that Gemma, you've shared, a spreadsheet, which had that detail.
I think I missed that. Maybe then what we need to say is that it's sort of 11 to 11, well, 10 till 10:45 is maybe the presentations, and then open discussion. I'll reword this better, from 10:45 until 12, which people can dip in and out of if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think that sounds nice, because that discussion could be the generative AI in assessments, but also some of these other questions about what people might want from this group and the topics, so we could kind of cover both.
Yeah. So yes. So if you're happy with me making those changes.
Are we keeping it to a 2 hours event? I'm just wondering whether it will be a bit taxing on people's time, just
I mean, we could do 45 minutes and 45 minutes, with the idea that if people wanted to leave after the first presentations, they could, or they could stay for the second 45. So go to say 11:30 if people want to stay for discussion.
Yeah, that feels a little bit more attractive. So I don't quite know why that 30 minutes makes such a difference.
Yeah.
I think we could do. So with a 10 minutes presentation, are we going to allow any time for Q&A afterwards? So 15 minutes of Q&A after, let's say, all three of us have presented, or would the open discussion start immediately after those presentations?
Yes, that's a good point. I almost feel like the questions would lead into the open discussion, and that it might become quite difficult to separate the two. But then equally, I do think it is worth giving that time. Maybe.
I think saying there'll be, a chance for a Q&A, like you say, Gemma, it kind of depends on what the questions are. If they're specifically about what we've presented on, then that's one thing. But if they're kind of broader questions, then it turns into an open discussion a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe if we say it's Q&A and open discussion, and then we've got that opportunity to build in a specific Q&A if we think it's going to be helpful, or if it's going to be a little bit more helpful to go straight into the assessment discussion, then we can go straight in.
Yeah, I think an opportunity to ask questions is always nice, especially if since we have to use Blackboard Collaborate in the chat. It's not the friendliest.
Most friendly of, yeah. Yeah. Apparently I shared the wrong thing, so let me just share the right thing. That I think is the right one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, are we assessment or assessments?
Let me find the official email from Alt. I'll get back to you.
What's the official Alt email? Yes, we have to use Collaborate, because Alt say we have to use Blackboard to collaborate, unfortunately. They set everything up for us, so they set up the webinar, it's all done by them, so they do it through Collaborate. Yes, it's unfortunate. Thank you, Sally. I shall make. Yes, thank you. I'll make the change on it.
I think another concern I had was at the moment within our institution, we are going through a number of changes, strategic changes and structural changes as well. So it is, I would say, still an evolving area within Bolton, how we are approaching use of generative AI, or I would say clear guidance on using generative AI in digital assessments. So is there a particular structure we want to apply in our presentations? I think this is a question for Alison. And is Lisa here with us today? Has Lisa joined?
Unfortunately.
Okay, so Alison, did you have any thought on talk about?
Yeah, I was wondering that as well. I think what we might end up doing, or what I'd be most comfortable doing from a Birmingham point of view, is more about the kinds of conversations that are happening. And I think that's actually quite a nice way in if we're then leading on to more general discussions, because there are certain policies, but there are a lot of questions about other things and whether they should be policies or not, or, you know, are they in the pipeline, and you know, what are other universities doing and what can we borrow from them. So I think those, knowing what conversations everyone is having is actually really interesting.
I think, yeah, I think that probably will nicely lead to the open discussion as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And maybe I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of overlap between us all in terms of the types of conversations. So if we can just share in advance, and maybe go into details about different ones, just so that it's not too repetitive. That feels like it would work.
So I've slightly rejigged the blurb so that it's more of a conversation focus, just to kind of give that space, that wiggle room.
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks, Gemma.
Yeah. Okay, so the other bits that we need to set in stone for Alt for when we ask them to set everything up is what level of access do we want this to be? Do we want it to be just to people who've signed up to the digital assessment SIG, just to people who are members of Alt, or open to the whole sector?
It's a very good question.
I would always say open to everyone, but especially because it's a new SIG, I don't think we can restrict it just to members.
Yeah.
Yes, because we're hoping this will encourage people to join. I don't know what the benefit would be to restricting it only to Alt members as opposed to everyone.
Yeah. So if we're saying, does everyone agree with the idea that we open it sector-wide and use it as a way to kind of gather more members in?
Yes.
Yeah, unless Alta put any kind of requirement that goes against that.
Yeah, I don't think we've got a requirement that goes against us doing that. It's just making sure that we're all happy for it to be at that level. Yeah. And then, yes, so that's it. Those are the bits that we needed to firm up. So I will just review the blurb in terms of those bits that we've discussed, and again make sure that you all get started that before the end of the week, before we put it into Alt.
Have you decided what we're using to capture data from the open discussion? Would you be using the chat from BB Collab, or should we consider using something like Padlet or something similar? Is there any restriction from Alt on that?
So there isn't a collaboration tool that Alt say that we have to use. So we could go with anything that people have got access to. So we could go with Padlet, we could go with Vivox, whatever people would personally prefer, or from your point of view as the people who were doing those presentations, it might be an idea to do something that all three of you have access to as the main starting point, but we don't necessarily have to firm that up until just before the webinar, really, unless anyone has a particular preference.
Well, I'm always open to learning about a new tool, but I'm familiar with Padlet, and I think we could also use Mentimeter or Slido, but I suppose, like you say, we have to make sure that all three of us will have access to it, at least, to facilitate that discussion.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that we might just need to get in contact with Lisa as well and just double check between the three of you who's got access to what, and see if we can find a tool that everybody's got access to. Yeah.
I have a question to Nurun. Nurun, you guys had a webinar recently. It was really nice.
Yes, you attended. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
You used Teams as well as Padlet, didn't you? And which one did you find more useful in collecting data? Was it there was a lot of questions on the Teams chat as well. So
yes, I think for me, I personally I set up the Padlet because I feel like it's much easier for people to anonymously contribute to the discussion forum, on Padlet. Whereas with Teams, if you get signed out of Teams and signed back in, then you lose all the previous chat. So I think for some people, they could not access the chat as well because of some restrictions, policy-related restrictions in some institutions. Whereas with Padlet, everyone can contribute there. So that's why we kept both options open there. But I think accessibility-wise, I would say Padlet was much easier, and we've got, I think, a lot of engagement we've had on Padlet from both events.
Okay, because I was part of that webinar as the audience, I wanted to just say, if you're having one, it's good if you have just one chat, because it's too much to keep up with both chats, because sometimes you're answering questions from both chats and it's difficult to read both. So when you're having it, maybe you can have just one chat, since you're familiar with it, and you also said Padlet works for you. So since you're presenting, it might be a good thing. And also, like you said, you can like filter it by subject, and it's very clear for everyone. So
yes, I think that's a good proposition. I think between myself, Alison, and Lisa, if we can maybe trial it, see which one works better, then I think we could opt for an accessible option for people attending. Because I think one of the problems with Teams is, I think the problem with accessibility, some would prefer to just, I think, send a comment or post a comment on the chat or using the Q&A option on Teams, while some would prefer to put it on Padlet. So if we just ask them to put it on Padlet, are we restricting? So I suppose, having that discussion. But Solani, like you said, I think it would be useful to just have one focused discussion forum, either using Teams chat, or not Teams chat, sorry, BB Collab chat or Padlet. BB Collab is not something that many colleagues are familiar with or use often. So we might need to take that into consideration as well if we are going to use BB Collab as a main chat forum or discussion forum.
Yeah, I think that's why I'd be tempted to maybe turn the chat off on BB Collab, just because of how unfamiliar it is to many people, and just to use whatever other option we go with that's slightly more familiar to people than BB Collab is. Yeah. Okay, so the last bits that I've got on the agenda are just to go over what we've got in the planning document. So if I just share the planning document with you all.
Also, just to add on what we were discussing earlier, just before the event for that webinar I organized, we decided between myself and the guest speakers who will be keeping an eye on the chat, because we had the option for colleagues to contribute in the chat and the Teams chat as well as on Padlet. So I was kind of keeping an overarching view of all the forums, but two of the guest speakers were constantly responding to comments and questions that were posted in the chat. So I think for our event, we may want to do or take a similar approach if we consider keeping both options open.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Again, that's something that when they've set up the meeting for us, we can change that on and off in the meeting from the playing that I did about 10 minutes ago. So at least we've got that opportunity to do that way rather than having to set all of that in advance, which is great. Okay, so I've shared the spreadsheet. So just so that you know, in April, we'll need to send this spreadsheet off to Alt so that they can see what we've been doing as a SIG. So it might be an idea to kind of start fleshing bits out a little bit now so that we can kind of have a plan across the year. So I wasn't in the last meeting. From what I gathered, it was agreed that it was going to be one webinar topic. Was it every 3 months or every 2 months?
3 months, I think we agreed.
3 months. Okay, so what we might want to do then is, so we've got one for January, so actually then we're looking at April, aren't we? Rather than...
Yeah, I think we were sort of thinking for during the academic year, which obviously means probably not in summer or December, and avoiding Easter. So not necessarily definitely every 3 months, but you know, 4 4 where they can fit.
Yeah, so if we were going to try and avoid summer, then we'd probably have to do January, March, May to get the 3 in, with the idea that next year we'd probably have one September, maybe late September, early November time, so that you had like 4 across the year.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
The other option is to swap out maybe the May webinar for an in-person event. So that you then do kind of 3 webinars and 1 in-person event across the year.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be nice.
Will we have access to any subsistence funding for members?
Yeah, so there is access to funding for in-person events from Alt. It's a maximum of £500. We do have to put in for it, and it goes to the Alt trustees to approve. So we might not get the maximum amount for it. But yeah, we do have to go in and bid for that process. So if we are going to do an in-person event, we kind of need to have it on our radar sooner rather than later, so we can work our way through that process.
Do you know, Gemma, just thinking about that £500, because in my head that was just for kind of maybe venue or catering and things like that. But, you know, in-person events mean people are traveling. Not everyone will get approval from their own budget holders for that. Can we offer, say, train fares for people who might be traveling?
I mean, we could ask. I can
feel
ask
like
the
that would be
question
really
as well
nice.
in the guidance whether we can put it aside specifically for that.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any harm in asking the question.
Yeah, because I'm, you know, just aware that we're in the Midlands. We're pretty close to anywhere, and institutions have such variation in terms of what CPD gets approved. It would be nice to be able to offer that if we can.
Yeah. Let me ask the question, Volt, and see what they say. I mean, it depends on how far people are coming as well. £500 might not go that far for, say, Lisa, who's flying over. And it is £500 for the whole SIG, so we might not have the room in the budget to make that kind of manoeuvre, but there's nothing, I think, wrong with asking the question. Nikki.
Hi, just wonder, are the webinars free to attend?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I remember Alt normally charge a fee for attending events.
Yeah, there's nothing, at least on the sign-up form, that indicates that people would have to pay if we put it open to the whole sector. So I'm assuming that they are free, because otherwise I would expect them to say. Yeah.
I think it's for alt members only, isn't it? That the CPD events are open to for alt members only, isn't it?
For the webinars, it's different. We can open it across the sector for the webinars, but for the in-person events, it would be for alt members only.
Oh, because there was a CPD event that I had contributed to. I think this was, it almost seems like last year, but it was this summer. But it was only open to alt members.
It's when you sign up for the form, you've got 3 levels of choice.
Okay.
So the person who does the sign up can decide whether it's alt members only, SIG members only, or open to anybody.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So how do we feel about an in-person event? Do we want it to replace a webinar, or are we thinking of it in addition to a webinar?
I have a feeling it might take some organising in a way that it will take up the time we would maybe usually spend on a webinar. Can we like can we repurpose it somehow? Like parts of the in-person event can later be made into a recording for the blog or something. I'm just trying to think how to kind of share it more widely.
Yeah, I mean, we could make it hybrid, or we could record it and then we could, or record it with audiovisual equipment and then send it out later. If we did something that was, say, more of a kind of summit or symposium rather than say a workshop. So, but if we were going to go down the kind of summit symposium route, we've also got to consider planning, people sending in papers, us approving papers, that kind of thing.
I think it's a lot more time consuming if you want to turn it into that kind of event. I mean, we've got a fair bit of hybrid expertise here at Nottingham and could possibly host it if we got some money for catering. Got quite a nice location where we can use surface hubs and stuff. When you turn it into a bit more of a kind of academic style conference, you just end up having to follow certain rules, don't you, about, you know, anonymity and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. My feeling is that, well, should we see? Well, maybe we need to make the decision before we do this, but I would think, like, should we see how hard it is to do the webinars, how time consuming and how much effort it feels like when we do the first webinar before we sort of decide whether to have a webinar as well as an in-person event, one of them, or whether we just decide to have the in-person event. Because I think the amount of effort put into an in-person event, it makes me feel that we should. I definitely think we want an in-person event.
Yes.
I mean, what do people think about Nottingham? We're fairly central, so we tend to be quite popular for. But so is Birmingham. No, it should be Birmingham, shouldn't it? Obviously, I definitely want to come to Birmingham. What am I talking about? Please, Birmingham, host it.
Oh, I was just like, oh yeah, trip to Nottingham. We've been to a couple of conferences in Nottingham, and yeah, we found it easy to get.
Were they in Monica Partridge building? Those conferences, because that's our kind of big building where we've got some space and quite good catering.
I have a feeling the last one we went to would have been at your arrival at Nottingham Trent.
Oh, right.
Oh, I didn't pay that much attention to what institution it was.
Oh dear, sorry.
Well,
I think we'd be happy to host it as long as it's like just a day rather than like several days, because then it gets complicated.
Yeah, I mean the other reason I was thinking about Birmingham is that we have got a member who would have to fly in, so airport wise that might be slightly easier.
From where?
Lisa's coming from Ireland.
From Ireland.
I'm not. I imagine it's probably going to be. Well, she's Queen's, so it'll be coming from.
She's Belfast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get Belfast to East Midlands, isn't a thing, is it?
Yeah, and I know that Belfast to Birmingham is a thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know that maybe would slightly make things easier just for anyone who's in that direction. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be involved in kind of the hybrid element of it, because it's kind of where I came from originally in sort of live streaming and stuff. And we like to make those, here we like to kind of spend a bit of effort and prior planning to get that working. But I don't know what facilities you've got at Birmingham at the moment for hybrid. Have you got a special hybrid room or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got quite a few, to be fair.
Yeah. I'd love to come and see that, actually, and it could be an excuse for me to come and prep for an event. So we're talking about next summer, are we?
Yeah, maybe May, June time, maybe before the kind of summer break where everybody kind of goes off on holidays.
That's that's interesting, Nikki. I like that suggestion about maybe hooking into DigiFest. I was talking to some people was it with you, with this group? We were talking to some people about DigiFest stuff. Oh no, it was with the XR group. So they are interested in doing some stuff, actually. I think the DigiFest team are kind of struggling to get that kind of unique kind of spark of interest to get people going to it again, because it kind of ended up being most people wanted to go to the virtual one. So maybe we could hook up with the DigiFest folk. What do people think about that? I think that's a really good idea, Nikki.
Yeah, I was thinking that linking it with an event might make sense, either DigiFest or the actual Alt conference, which isn't till September, obviously, but
we could do both.
Presumably a lot of people will be going to that one.
Why don't we try and do both? So DigiFest is 11th to the 12th of March 2025.
Yeah.
And that's in Birmingham, isn't it? Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've got a contact I can pass on to somebody who was asking that question, but largely I say about XR stuff, because at DigiFest they always do some kind of strange thing at the beginning. I don't know. Have you been to the ones where they've done sort of the hologram things, and they have like a little show? They were interested in somebody at Nottingham who was doing some stuff around that.
I still have memories of the interpretive dance. I can't remember what year it was. That was probably 2019 or something.
Well, are they bad memories though, Helen? Are you scarred?
It was memorable, like I remember it. So.
True, that's true. Yeah, Birmingham sounds like the plan. But I would love if I'm invited and allowed to come and explore your hybrid test. Actually, we did do a project, a QAA funded project with Matt from and Gabby from Birmingham. So we probably do have an excuse to come if it's allowed.
No, of course.
Oh, great.
My only thoughts with DigiFest is that gives us not a great amount of planning time.
I feel like maybe around September may be better for an in-person event, because I think, Sally was mentioning earlier that we might want to just get a feel for how it's going from the first webinar, and then maybe another webinar over summer, or maybe just before summer, and then we could maybe do something as part of the ALT conference.
Yeah.
Because I think I did sign up to go to the DigiFest next year. It's in March, I believe, isn't it? So we wouldn't have enough time really to prepare.
I'm just wondering though whether we could go more on the basis of having a presence. Some people do like little talks there, but they're not like big things. They're more. I saw one from Lancaster once, which was literally just sharing some process that they use about innovation. I can't remember who it was. A guy at Lancaster IT. It was a fascinating session. It was really good. It was about how to come up with new ideas, and it was like literally really short in the main kind of area. It wasn't a big talk or anything. It's just in the main kind of exhibition area, and it was literally like a stand-up where this person just shared what they've been doing, which I think we could probably just like promote SIG that way. If there's no cost to it, obviously. Hopefully there's no cost to it. So that's Alison, that's not ALT East Midlands, is it? Because I think ALT East Midlands are not actually doing anything anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, it's East England.
Yeah, East England. So I think maybe
totally
we
different.
are. Well, I don't know. I wonder if we're merged into East England, because it was EMLT, wasn't it? And I haven't heard anything about EMLT for a very long time.
I feel like this is maybe a conversation that we need to kind of carry on next time we meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just conscious of time. Do we want to put in a planning meeting with everyone in January before the webinar, or just those individuals that are specifically involved in presenting?
I would be happy to help. Sorry, I can, man the chat and help in any way you guys want me to.
Okay.
I'm happy with either. Or both.
Yes. Explore opportunities with DigiFest, see if there is an opportunity for us to be able to kind of promote the SIG through however that's possible. So if I put something in for January for maybe a rehearsal, for us to just kind of go through, make sure everything works. So I'll have a look at dates and send out a poll to see which dates work best for everyone. But yes, other than that, you'll hear from me before the end of the week with the updated blurb and the updated blog post, and we'll get all of that through to Alt, and I'll be able to send you off all of the links that Alt create for us when they send them back through to us. Okay.
Well, could I just one last thing? Could I just say that I am, although I'm not presenting at the webinar, I would love to be involved in just making sure everybody gets online and everything, and learning a bit more about Collaborate. So if you could include me, that'd be great.
Yes. I'll make sure that everybody's got the option along to the planning meeting if they wish to, or step out if they're not able to come in and support. Okay.
I was thinking that although I don't know how it happened, but we went with the three of us to do mini presentations, but I was originally thinking that it would be a nice opportunity for the group members to be there to introduce themselves and perhaps also facilitate the open discussion at the end, because I think it would really be an enriching discussion that we could all, I think, probably, you know, take clues from on what to do next, in which direction to set our course.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll make sure that that's something that I'd fold into that blurb before it goes out. So yeah, thank you. Has anyone got anything else before we go? No? In which case then, thank you everyone, and have a very nice Christmas period, and I will see you all in January.
You too. Bye, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone else.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.